Recording. Okay, great. Good evening, all. Good morning. We had registration from over 21 countries, guys. I hope at least 21 people, we have 21 people here. So thank you all for registering with us. This is again a free webinar for us to give knowledge about knowledge and Scrum. We've been doing this Scrum Kanban series from last 1 month. We had one in the last 1 month, and then this is the second one. We have 2 more moving forward planned for right now, but you can expect 4 or 5 other Kanban series in this particular series. We do have Vikas with us, who is an AKT, is joining us from AgileFever, as he is a trainer, and he is also one of the co-hosts with this particular webinar today. So thank you, thank you, Vikas, for being with us. I will let you introduce yourself in the when we kick off the actual webinar. Let me take a couple of minutes here to talk about the company that is hosting this webinar today, right? So let's directly jump into the company and what this company does, right? And then we'll jump into the webinar directly. AgileFever is located in Dallas, Texas. We are operating in United States, India, Australia, Europe, and it's growing rapidly. The mission is to help the companies achieve the business agility by whatever resources they need, be it coaching, be it training, be it staffing, and everything. So everything agile. I'll be running here. The reason all of you are here is to learn Kanban versus Scrum, not the company. So I don't want to take a lot of time in this area. I'll be running, sweeping off. So those are the trainings that we, or services that we provide. Those are the variety of services: Agile transformation, DevOps adoption, test automation, ILM adoption, and all. These are different kinds of trainings that we offer and still growing on. Why do we have to choose AgileFever? Because we are the best, right? So yeah, I'll talk about the reasons later. You can look at those slides later and then understand why is it best, right? So this is me, just an introduction of me. And then once I talk about myself, I'll be moving this to, leaving this to Vikas. He'll be talking more about him. My name is Sharad Siripuram. I am an Agile transformation coach. I have worked in multiple transformations, leading Scrum, Kanban, SAFe, less adoptions across the globe. So had pretty good experience and pretty good knowledge in all of those areas. I've been doing this for a long time now. So whatever you're talking, you can trust us. We're not just gambling here, right? So that's me. I want to make sure you guys know who is, who's speaking here today. I just don't want to be like, oh, who is this guy, right? So that's me. And that's Mr. Vikas, right? Because I'll leave it to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Sharad. So as you can see, like I'm an AKT from Kanban University for almost a year now, and have been training people on how to use Kanban, how to introduce Kanban into your organization. In addition to that, I hold professional Scrum Master certification 3 from Scrum.org. And if you look at the intensity of it, so we have around approximately 1,100 people who are only PSM3 across the world. Right? In addition to that, I have a good full amount of experience in the IT industry and have taken the case studies of agile transformation of many organizations using various methodologies like be it Scrum, Kanban, less, SAFe, etc. And I've devised my own models also around enhancing the business agility of the organization. Yeah, so that is about me. Thanks.
Thanks, Vikas. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us in this webinar today. And 23 years of experience, tremendous transformation experience. Really appreciate you being with us here today to help our team here, people understand the Kanban versus Scrum, right? Okay, so I would let you do the honors to start this.
Thanks, Sharad. Yep. All right, so over here we are at Kanban versus Scrum. Now, what is Kanban and what is Scrum, and what should we follow and when? But before I go there, I like to say that Kanban versus Scrum is a pointless debate. So in any organization, what we should more focus upon is achieving the business agility, right? The sustenance, the survivability, and the orientation to the customer. Whether you follow Scrum or whether you follow Kanban, until and unless your team and the organization culture have matured enough that they understand the importance of delivering value to the customer faster, until then, you cannot become agile. I have seen organizations and teams that follow Scrum by the book. You will see many waterfalls within each sprint. You might see a development sprint, a QA sprint, and a hardening sprint separately. Right? On the other hand, you may see organizations think Kanban is just a board, right? They'll just put the workflow stages over there and have no clue on how they want to optimize the flow. Right? What is their service level expectations? They don't have a clue.
Right.
Those organizations may not be able to achieve agility. Right? It is just a myth for them that they are agile. Okay. So Kanban is a method, Scrum is a framework. You can use one, you can use both, you can use a combination of these, or you can adopt your own agile practice. The idea is that your team, your organization have to be mature enough and imbibe agile in your culture. Fantastic. But having said that, let's still explore, like if you're following Scrum and Kanban, right. So what is it that is different? Yeah.
and I think our viewers must be thinking, if there is no point about debating this, why are we even doing this? Why did we even say Kanban versus Scrum, right? I guess that's a buzzword across the industry right these days. I mean, I think a year or two from now, earlier, it's a buzzword, right? So there is no versus, right? It could be waterfall versus agile, right? But why would it be agile versus agile, right? Both of these come under agile practices. Like you said, Kanban is a method or set of practices taken from many different good practices, right? And then Scrum is a framework by itself. And you greatly put it, we can work it together. So there is no reason for us to compare both of these frameworks. They can work together, like you said, right? Anything and both of these, right? Nice. So yeah, let's move forward and see what's there more. Okay, so Vikas.
Yeah. So in this webinar, we'll cover these following aspects of understanding the difference between Kanban and Scrum. We'll discuss about what kind of framework or method Kanban is. We'll discuss about the roles, sprint versus the flow. How do you do planning and release in Kanban versus Scrum? And what about the CEO wishes? So it is a $1 million question, like, oh, I'm running a sprint. My CEO comes in and says that, oh, this is Friday, can you please deliver it now? And this happens in Kanban. Right. So no one is shielded with this question. Right?
Yep. Let's move forward and we'll get started with the prescriptive versus adaptive, Vikas.
Yes. So I'll say Scrum is more prescriptive than Kanban. Right? So, and Kanban is more adaptive than Scrum. Let's look at how. Sharad, would you go to the next slide? Yeah. So this is the difference between Scrum and Kanban. So certainly, as I said, Scrum is a framework and Kanban is a method. What it means is that, so Scrum provides you a skeleton of framework, or it's a framework or a skeleton of services basically, around which you can modify your policies and the rules. Right? You can modify your processes, you can adjust your processes. Whereas Kanban provides you a set of principles, service delivery principles, change management principles. It provides you certain practices. There are 6 general practices of a Kanban. That is something that if you follow, you'll be able to implement Kanban to its core.
Right.
So why is Scrum prescriptive? Yeah, you want to go ahead?
Nope. Yeah, I think great points. The line that you're talking, Scrum is prescriptive. I want to emphasize that it's more prescriptive than Kanban, but it's not prescriptive by itself, right? Right. It's very less prescriptive compared to waterfall, right? But it's less.
What are the practices?
Waterfall, right? So I think I wanted to stress on that point and be like, okay, it's prescriptive, but not as compared to waterfall, but not as less as Kanban, because in Scrum we have this fixed roles and events and artifacts, whereas in Kanban it's You want it all, you don't want
Yeah.
it all, that's fine, right? So
Yeah.
that's the reason I think we are talking about prescriptive and adaptive.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. As you said, right, roles. Yeah, there are three roles that Scrum provides. One is Scrum Master, who upholds the value of the Scrum, product owner, who is responsible for delivering the value to the customer, and certainly the developer. Um, uh, can you go back to the previous slide, Sharad? I think
Oh, sorry, which
the
this
slide said, yeah,
here?
previous, yeah. And the developers who are actually responsible for delivering the value, who are developing the value. Like developers is a team of architects, developers is a team of developers plus engineers plus the QA team, anything, and designers, right? Anyone who is responsible for creating an increment in the sprint. Whereas Kanban says that there are no roles. Like you want to introduce Kanban, you want to implement Kanban, whatever is your current processes, whatever is your current role, take it as it is on the board. Right? You start following the same role, and then you optimize the flow, optimize the process, and then you see whether you need that role or not. Scrum says that possibly you can have a team size of up till 10 people, so that you have no challenges in coordination, and the entire team works as a cohesive team. Whereas Kanban sets no limit to the team size. So I have seen Kanban being implemented in a team of 140 plus people and ever increasing. Right? Because they basically go towards, visualize on the board, go to the flow and everything else. Whereas Scrum says that you have to be cohesive to deliver a value. You look at the events. So Scrum prescribes 4 events that must be there in any Scrum implementation, so that you get the enough chances to inspect and adapt. Right? So there is sprint planning, where you plan for the sprint. You have the sprint in itself, which is the heart of the Scrum. Right? Then you have the retrospective and the review, basically. Kanban also prescribes events, or we call it feedback loops, but it doesn't say that it is mandatory for you. You can modify that also. However, there is certain guidance that based on the maturity level of the organization, how deep you are into Kanban implementation, how deep you are into organizational maturity, based on that, you can define your own feedback loops or cadences.
Right.
And lastly,
okay, yeah. Go ahead now.
Yeah. Okay. And lastly, Scrum has 3 artifacts, basically, which are mandatory for you to inspect and adapt. Like artifacts, Scrum says that you must have a product backlog so that you can look at it. You must have a sprint backlog, and you must have an increment at the end of the sprint, so that you can look at these particular artifacts, look at what value you delivered, reflect back upon yourself, and then modify your practices in case it needs to be. Whereas Kanban does not have any of the artifacts defined. However, they have mentioned that you must define some kind of explicit qualities when you move from one stage to another stage, so that the acceptance to the second stage is easier. It is visible to the people.
Nice.
So these are the various differences between the Scrum and Kanban.
Yep, I had an interesting point when you were talking about a team that is 140 people, right? I am surprised. In fact, I am surprised by hearing that 140 people. I mean, the complexity is gonna go high like anything, right? I mean, this company might be at best at their ways of working, right? The best in the best of, right? But now, keeping that in mind for our viewers in the webinar, I don't want to go back. I don't want to. Can we go back and think that, okay, it's fine for us to have X number of people, so I'm going to have 40 people in a team and start working on it? Do you think it's an ideal way of thinking that, or what are the things that we should be having in mind before we say, hey, that's fine to have 40 people in our team or 10 people in our team? What kind of things that you want to highlight when you want to look at this kind of number of people on the team?
So it depends. See, if you are going for a Scrum, certainly you will change your organizational structure. So you have seen Scrum. We have seen Scrum being implemented and successful in companies like IBM also, which is a very large organization. So they changed their structure. So I have implemented Scrum in an organization. So we changed the structure into spots and tribes. We follow the Spotify model. We made sure that no team is more than 10 people. So we try to change it. Whereas when I implemented Kanban, we said that don't change anything, just start visualizing everything and start measuring the service level expectation. And then there will be a need to divide a team or merge a team, right? And then we go ahead with that. Right? So that is how.
Yeah. What ideally you're saying is, why do you want to do it in the start of it? You have the team as is. Don't increase or don't decrease it. Don't change anything, but start with what you have, and then you will get into problems or you will do great things. When you know that the team size itself is a problem, then maybe break it down to 2 teams, 3 teams, 5 teams. Or if you think that the team size is not a problem at all, then why do you have to change it, right? So that's where you're getting.
Perfect. Yeah.
Fantastic. Nice. Thank you. So let's move forward. I think we already started talking about roles, right? So, and then we'll talk in depth about the roles in Scrum versus Kanban, or Scrum and Kanban, in fact. So I wanted to tell this out. So I think the title should ideally be Scrum or Kanban, but we wanted to put it Scrum versus Kanban on purpose, obviously, right? So guys, I want to stress on it more and more. It's no Scrum versus Kanban. I want you guys to forget about there's no versus, there's no fight between these two. They're all together trying to achieve business agility, right? So yeah, that's one thing that I want to talk about, right? So I think we did also speak about roles in Scrum, and then right? So what do you think, Vikas? Do we want to go deep in here in this area?
Yeah, there are certain points that we should highlight over here. So we already talked about the roles, product owner, Scrum Master, and developers. Right? The point to note over here is that there are no hierarchy, right, in a Scrum team, and there are no sub teams. So for example, if we look at any waterfall team, so you will have a manager, senior manager, you'll have the developers, etc. Right? Then you have sub teams like, he's my testers team, this is my design team. Right? But when you implement a Scrum, so you say that all of them are developers, all as a conjoined team are responsible for delivering the value to the customer. So if your tester is ill or sick, is not coming in, so a developer has to jump in the shoes of a tester. Right? Let's say if you have a front end and back end team, right? If your front end people does not know back end, if you want to actually achieve maturity in a Scrum, so you have to make sure that your front end people also try to know back end. Right? So you try to be as much as possible across functional teams, so that the entire team has a tool to deliver a particular incremental end.
Right. And I think the other point that what we wanted to stress here is a Scrum Master and a project manager, the same words. I mean, same, right? Obviously not. It's a different perspective, different mindset altogether. I think there's a single word that can totally change the perspective of what project manager versus a Scrum Master, right? So I think I've been asked this question multiple times. I would like to answer it in this way, right? Where project manager traditionally, right, he or she thinks that the team works for the project manager, right? Whereas the Scrum Master, if you look at it, Scrum Master serves his team, his or her team, right? So if you look at the hierarchy or ways, right, the project manager stays on the top and the team members, they're reporting to the project manager. But here, the Scrum Master is at the bottom and the team is on his shoulders, helping, trying to achieve whatever they want, right? I think Scrum Master serves the team, whereas project manager thinks that the team works for him, right? Those are the two different ways of thinking, right? So as a project manager, you don't expect everything to be done for you, but as a Scrum Master, you think that I am there for my team to help in whatever or whichever way is required for them to achieve that business requirement of the customer and make sure the customer is happy. I think that sentence or that way of putting it makes more sense for me, right? How does it matter? I'm doing the same thing, right? No, you're not doing the same thing. You are being a servant leader here, or a leader here, true leader here, right? Or there you are being a manager and managing those people, right? So I think, what are your points there? Do you think, did you want to add any more things in here? Because
Yeah, so I think this covers it all. A few things that can be added is like, uh, so when you implement a Scrum, uh, there are many implementation of Scrum that have failed because we could not let the project manager role go away at
yeah,
all, or an architect role go away, right? So that culture shift has to happen within the organization, within the team. Now that might create a kind of a psychological unsafety for a project manager, like, oh, now I have become a Scrum Master, I've lost all my authority, what should I do? So that is a culture shift that happens, right? And that is something that we need to train people on, that no, you have not lost your authority, you have actually become a servant leader. So that is what Scrum is. Yeah.
right. Fantastic, fantastic. Then I thought we have a third point about what about the market research? Product owner takes care of it, right? I think I'll add a couple of sentences, and if you want to add more on there, it's great, right? So ideally, the role of a product owner is taken like a person who writes these user stories, guys. This is not the person just writing user stories, right? This person has done market research, has done competitive research, knows what is existing in this particular area already, and knows done the research on what and how can I build a better product for my company given this kind of work we are doing it here. So that kind of research is not a business analyst becomes product owner, project owner becomes a scrum master, right? It's just not writing stories, but a lot more than what a business analyst does, right? So I've heard this notion of, yes, oh, BA becomes a PO, PM becomes a scrum master. That's an agile. So I think that's more than that. So because
Yeah, yeah. And just to add to this statement that PM becomes a PO,
yeah,
and we start delivering in 2 weeks, right? And let's call a daily stand-up meeting a daily Scrum meeting, right?
that's it.
So it's a false implementation of Scrum,
Right.
basically.
So, yeah. Ideally, there's a lot of cultural shift and mindset shift there also.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're drilling deep into Scrum now. let's go into the Kanban side of it, right? So we've been talking about the roles here particularly, right? And then in Kanban, right? Kanban, like I said, it's a method, it's a set of practices. There are no defined roles. There are multiple organizations, multiple people say it in different ways. There are have to stick to XYZ roles, there are XYZ roles and all of those things. But you can have, there is nothing wrong in having any roles that you need as a team, but there are no fixed roles mandated. Like in Scrum, you have a Scrum Master, like you have a product owner. In Kanban, it does not say you should have a Kanban lead, you should have a product owner, SDM, SR, right? But there are many organizations which say differently, but again, Kanban is very flexible, right? So this is a set of practices we bought from different places. If you start working as a team and if you think there is a role required in this particular area to drive our team so that we would be doing the job while someone is helping us with XYZ thing, great. If you want to add a role of Kanban lead, fantastic, you add it. But if there is no mandate that there should be one, right? It's flexible. The same time, you need someone who to decide on what we need to work as a team. We do not know we are all over. We are working on so many different things. Some companies call it SRM, and then some call it product owner, right? You can bring in that role and you can start using that role in there. It's flexible, but it's not mandatory here. Because what do you think?
Yeah. So in just to add on that, so Kanban says that you are doing an awesome work now. Right now, also you're doing an awesome work. Your practices are completely mature. But why don't you just put it on the board? Right? Visualize everything and look at it. There could be some bottleneck somewhere. Right? So you can take your project manager as it is. Right? You can take your architect as it is on the board. Right? They will follow the same responsibilities, same roles. But when you start looking at measuring yourself, or when you are looking at the service level expectations, you'll find that architect might be creating a bottleneck because they do not have the time to review. Then you will try to look at why this architect role has been created. Why can't I have senior developers also doing the code review? Why should I wait for the architect to do the code review?
Correct.
That is where you bring a role in. So it is completely adaptive. Like if you have a problem, you will adapt.
Right. And the Kanban book makes it visual, right? It makes it open. It brings up the problem up. It does not solve the problem. You guys have to solve the problem. We have to solve the problem, but it brings up the problem. That's the beauty of it, right? So we implement Scrum, we implemented Kanban, we implemented Safe. Hey, we are not solving any problems. Nothing is happening here. It does not solve any problem. It brings up the problem so you can solve it, right? It's 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 interesting actually. We put some pictures in there where the Kanban team is doing their daily stand-up and all the things. I think so. In this, we are not going deep into there are so many things we can go into deep, but here we're trying to focus on the differences between Scrum and Kanban, and how are they different or similar, and how do they operate in a framework, right? So let's move forward in this.
Yeah. So let me cover this sprint versus flow.
Yep.
This is the third aspect. This is the third aspect of Kanban versus Scrum. So so a sprint is something, as you know, like it's a relay. So you just pass the baton on, keep on passing the baton on until you actually you are following the Scrum. Right? So there is no gap in between. Whereas Kanban is like a flow. So it works around the rocks, and rocks are kind of a resistance that a company might have. It could be a resistance to change, it could be a bottleneck, or anything else. Right? If we move forward to the next slide. So this is a difference between the sprint versus the flow, or the Scrum versus the Kanban. So as I said, Scrum follows a sprint. Now, what is sprint? Sprint is a time box iteration. Right? It could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, maximum it can be a month. That is what is prescribed by the Scrum guide. As soon as you end one sprint, your another sprint starts immediately. Right? There is no gap. So people think like, oh, our sprint has ended. Let's look back, reflect upon it, and let's wait for 1 or 2 days to improve our practices and then start another sprint. No, that is not how it happens. You improve your practices and everything within the sprint itself. Right? The duration of the sprint has to be consistent so that there is no variability being caused within a sprint or within a Scrum, right? And everything should be done within the sprint and through the prescribed Scrum event. Why? It is mandatory. Otherwise, you will lose your chance to inspect and adapt. So if you don't do a sprint planning meeting at the start of the sprint, you will not know how your sprint backlog looks like and what will you deliver. Now, that is a separate topic that we'll cover later in planning and delivery. Right? So there we'll know how it is different. Now, look at Kanban. So in Kanban, we do not time box the work. Now, does that mean that it is waterfall? Does that mean it has no timelines? No. So in Kanban, approaches this time boxing in a different way. It says that set customer expectations through SLE. Now, what is SLE? SLE is service level expectation. So you measure how much time does it take. If you are in the software industry, you measure how much time does it take for you to deliver a change request of medium size. How much time does it take for you to solve a defect, which is a blocker defect, which is a critical defect, and likewise. Right? Then you plot that into a lead time distribution curve. If you know about the Weibull distribution, you create a Weibull graph, you kind of find out a mean, and based on that, you come up with your SLE. Now, what is SLE? You will say that, okay, I will deliver a change request of this size in 20 days and I'm 80% confident in that. You take this kind of SLE to your customers and say that, okay, I deliver your request, your changes in 20 days, but I'm only 80% confident. Your customer might come back and say that, no, I want it in a little early. All right, I can deliver it early also, but I will only have 70% confidence in that. Are you okay to take that risk or not? So this is how you define your SLEs. So it can be a range also. I'll deliver within 21 to 25 days, right? So based on that, you will define an SLE. That is a time boxing that you have done, and you keep on improving that. Right? It is kind of a continuous delivery flow. You don't end anything in Kanban, just like you end a sprint in Scrum. You don't end anything in Kanban. You keep on delivering it. You keep on moving it to ready to deliver work stage. And whenever you can create a bundle, you can release it. Again, we'll talk about it in more planning and delivery. In Kanban, in a sprint, you have a sprint backlog that you have planned during a sprint planning. In Kanban, team start pulling the work when they think their work WIP has been exhausted. So you limit the amount of the work that a particular person can do through WIP limits or work in progress limits. As soon as there is a space, the team starts pulling the work into their queue. So they don't wait for a sprint to end. They don't wait for any even to get started or any sprint planning meeting or anything like that. They simply pull the work as soon as they think they have the capacity. And this is where, Scrum and Kanban, this is why Scrum is called as a sprint, sprinting every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, where Kanban is called a flow because you don't have any time boxing over here. Do you want to add anything, Sharad?
I think I'm good. We pretty much covered everything in this area. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep moving, guys. We will take questions at the end. We will have some time left at the end, 15 minutes at least. So if you have questions, we will definitely take it at the end. So now we could talk a little about the planning and release, right? What is planning? How does planning look in Kanban versus Scrum, right? So obviously, right? Obviously, in Scrum, how we plan, right? We have a sprint planning, and then product owner talks about what, and the development team talks about how they can complete it, and then all of those things. I believe you already understand how the whole sprint planning happens, right? And it has a cadence. At every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, 1 week. I've seen sprints for about 2 weeks or 2 days too. So as your cadence ends, you start your new sprints, and then you kick off with your sprint planning, and then you go ahead with what to do and then how to do it, and then all of those things, right? Velocity and the capacity and all of those things. But in Kanban, right? In Kanban, we talk a lot about when do we do sprint planning at all? We don't do planning in Kanban. It is on demand as a demand arises. I think Vikas was talking about when the number of stories in a column is done and you pull it from your left column, right? So there is an event, if you can call it, you do a replenishment where you prioritize work. As the work in your columns or as the work in your workflow is done, you pull more work from your backlog. Right, so it's an ad hoc, it's an on demand as needed planning kind of thing, where you call it a replenishment meeting, where anyone who prioritizes the work or the team together meets to prioritize it and then pulls the work in and then start working on it. So there is no cadence here. There is no planning as kind of an event. It's as needed. Because did you want to add more on this?
Yeah. So you might set up, so more mature organizations go for more like an on-demand replenishment. Right? So you make your product backlog so ready, and that any developer or any designer or any person in the team can pull it up. They don't have to go back to any product owner or stakeholders to look at the priorities. But once you start setting up your Kanban, you might want to have a weekly replenishment or a bi-weekly replenishment or a monthly replenishment. So Kanban says that, so you will have your backlog, you create a buffer before you start developing. Now your team should have enough items in your buffer which are ready to be started for development, so that downstream team does not sit idle. Now that is called as replenishment of your buffer. So this sprint planning is like every 2 weeks, but that replenishment of buffer can happen once you have completed your items which are marked for delivery. As Sharad said, it could be ad hoc also, but in case you know that you have a lead time of 20 days or you have a lead time of 25 days, based on that, you can also set up your replenishment frequency. Right? So being on demand is like being more agile, right?
Yeah. I think you rightly mentioned it could be set up And then we can also recommend this. You can always set up, if you know your lead time, you can set it up. And if you're not meeting that SLEs, then you always cancel it and then keep going on. And once you're done, you could probably kick off that meeting again ad hoc, right? So it's again, who decides this? I think the team together decides it, right? Because so it's no green, black and white thing. You can work together to understand if it's yes or no, right? So yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. So there is one more point to add in this is like the delivery. So Kanban says it is a two-phase commit, right? So for example, as soon as you end your sprint, you deliver an increment, which is an additive value increment, right? In Kanban, you don't have a sprint, but still you create an increment, right? And that is the second phase of commitment. You might create distributed increments, right? Today you delivered 5 change requests, tomorrow you might deliver 3 blocker defects, and likewise, right? And then you might bundle them or release them individually. Now, Scrum says that, okay, every 2 weeks you must have an increment, but it doesn't say that within the week you cannot have it. Right? So within the week also you can have. So within a sprint also you can have multiple increments going in. Right? So this is where you can find the similarities and differences.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you, Vikas. Anything more before we move on to the CEO wishes?
Yeah, let's tackle this $1 billion question. How do you handle the CEO? You can't say no to these, right?
That is the no, right?
So if you're saying no to this, your wish is my command, right? If you say no to this, so better go and search out for a job, right? So be how agile you could be, the CEO's wishes or the highest priority items, as we call them, cannot be ignored. Why? There's a reason behind it. So your CEO is working with the top leadership. They are thinking about sustainability and the survivability of your organization. They know that if you don't release it right now, the competition is going to eat you up, right? So look at from this perspective, right? So there is a top leadership who knows how to survive in the business. They are all making those strategies, right? You have to actually tackle them. And that is why they have implemented Agile, so that you can be agile enough to include them in your processes. Right?
Okay.
So so let's look at how they differ. So in Scrum, you have defined a sprint backlog at the start of the sprint. Now, if you have to bring a change to the sprint backlog, and if that is impacting your sprint goal, then you have to connect with the product owner, right? So you have to negotiate with the product owner, like, we want to include this high priority item because it has come from my CEO, or this is the highest priority blocker defect we need to solve, right? And you have to make sure that it doesn't threaten your sprint goal. You might inspect and adapt later on why did we change the sprint backlog, right? And you can work on those improvements later on, but you must have to ensure that it is not threatening your sprint goal. It is not modifying your sprint goal. If it is modifying a sprint goal, that means you have to cancel that sprint. Now, how do you handle the CEO's wishes which are not in the sprint goal is something that is again $1 billion question, but we try to adjust those CEO wishes to the sprint goal also. Right? We try to work with CEO, like there's some part that we can deliver in the sprint. The other part is something that we'll deliver in the sprint, but we deliver. Right? Whereas if you look at the Kanban, so Kanban has a concept of class of service, which is like categorizing your work items based on the cost of delivery. So anything which is a CEO will is an expedite, or a higher priority blocker is an expedite, or anything which is required for you to survive in the business may become an expedite, right? You put it in the expedite lane completely, right? And move it. The entire team will work together to move that expedite ticket as soon as possible to the second commitment point, which is to the delivery. Right? So also you understand, you make SLAs visible on the board, right? People know that, okay, a priority defect will take 1 day, a critical defect will take 2 days, a highest priority change request will take 2 days to develop. People know all about it, right? This is how you will, try to adjust your high priority tickets. But it never happens that the work which is right now in progress will stop. It won't stop until unless it is in the expedite lane.
Correct.
So yeah.
I
So
can.
demand,
Mhm.
yeah.
Go ahead. Demand.
Like in Scrum, you had a chance to reflect in its sprint retrospective. You look at like why did we have to put that ad hoc request or the high priority ticket in this particular sprint. Similarly, you have it's retrospective in Kanban, right? A flow review meeting in Kanban, an operations review meeting in Kanban, right? Wherein you understand what were the demand patterns, how is demand coming in, and how can you optimize your flow.
Yep. Fantastic. So I want to kind of want to add few points in both the areas, right? So the difference, I think all of the people who are listening here might have understood the CEO's wish is defining the priority. I want to make it straight, right? How do we change if anything in the priority changes? How do we handle it in Scrum versus how do we handle it in Kanban, right? Obviously, you're committed to X as a sprint goal in Scrum, and then you have to negotiate the scope of the work that you have committed, and then you have to change like all those things, adjust, and then have to do it here. In Kanban, great, we have this expedite lanes like to visualize, right? To if someone is not understanding what we are talking about expedite, if you visualize your Kanban board, there are horizontal lines that we have in Kanban boards. The top lane, the swim lanes, we call them swim lanes, right? The top lane we have it as expedite, and then there's medium priority and rest of the work that we can. You can design it however you want to, but just for them to think about it and think like, okay, expedite stays on the top of it, right? So anything and everything that is mandatory that needs to be done right away goes onto the top lane of the expedite, right? Ideally, I think I've seen some Kanban flows having their swim lanes assigned to team members, but team by team, so individuals. But that's more for class of services where you define the priority of the items that you have in your backlog, right? So everything on the top in the expedite is you have to do it right now. In the middle is once there is nothing in the expedite, you go on to the next ones. If there is nothing on the high priority, then you could go to business as usual and you keep working on the things that you have in BAU, right? So that's how the hierarchy of priorities go. And then whenever there is a priority change and anything that comes from the CEO, it directly goes onto the top to the expert and we start working on it, right? So I kind of wanted to stress on that area because.
Yeah, and you may define your board based on the resources or the people that you have. Like it depends upon you, and you may define the priority based on the color of the ticket also. Right?
Yeah.
So it depends upon you, like how you want to.
Well, I think there's a good conversation on that also, defining the swim lanes depending upon people and defining the swim lanes depending upon the priority or as per the products that we work. I think that was a great conversation. Again, for me, I'm okay personally. I'm okay if you have swim lanes depending upon people. But what you are doing there is you are creating silos, right? You're saying, okay, I'm only bothered about my lane. I don't care whatever happens in anyone's lanes, right?
Yeah.
So I think the feel of the team is kind of missing in that area. And then there are areas where you don't have to work collaboratively with each other, right? There are tickets, 100 tickets, and each person work on 10 tickets. Then there is no way that you'd see the collaboration. But you're working on a software development team, and then you have to work hand in hand. I really don't see any effectiveness using that kind of things, right? Because you're creating silos ideally, which means you're gonna create lots of problems moving forward. So you can create swim lanes per person, but you have to think about all these problems or things that might come with it, right? But again, I usually, if at all they're working as a team, I wouldn't recommend. If they're a single person working like that, then it's fine. You think, right, guys?
Yeah. And manage the work, not the worker, is the motto.
Yep. Thank you. Awesome. So now I think that's another $1 million question. When to use what? Right? When to use Scrum and when to use Kanban? I'm going to say, I don't know, guys. You have to decide it. If you ask me, you have to decide it, right? Again, if you ask me when to use waterfall, when to use Agile or Scrum Kanban, then I might answer you, yeah. You think when your requirements are frozen, your requirements as this, you don't think to change. It's a 2 days thing. Okay, waterfall is fine because nothing is going to change there. It's okay. It's a mini thing. And I know when then things are dynamic and things change and you might have to adapt to Scrum or Kanban or anything. But Scrum and Kanban both are agile, right? Both they encourage business agility at the end. They are helping us to reach that business agility. There are two different ways to achieve that. There is no versus. There is no Scrum versus, right? Again, given said that, there are some things that best suit, or again, I mean, this is me. I could get blamed for saying, oh, you are wrong, Sharad. Some people could come back and say, I'm wrong for saying what I'm gonna say. But it's an opinion from an experience that we have gained from what we are doing from a while, right? So, and I can and that's what we're talking about here, and we can give reasons for this also, right? So when teams can work on incremental delivery, probably you can use Scrum. The increments can be produced at regular intervals and can be usable, right? Not many changes happen during the sprint that jeopardizes the sprint goal. Your work environment or the requirements that you're getting is not too dynamic, you can use Scrum, right? Because Scrum, ideally, we know we do commitment for a week or two or three, depending upon your sprint length. And then you come here, barge in with total different requirements, change the priorities and all, and it's useless having a sprint goal, doing whole sprint planning for the things that we're not going to work, right? The whole thing is going to get wasted. When things are normal, at least can be frozen to 2 weeks, yes, great. If things cannot change too dynamically, right? You are infrastructure team management, you are handling with prod support and all of those things. You can't just go and say, I'm going to work on this 50 bugs next 2 weeks because I have 10 team members. So I'm not going to work on anything apart from this 10 bugs, right? For 50 bugs. And I'm going to freeze this requirement for next 2 weeks and I'm going to use Scrum for this. It's not going to happen like that, right, guys? You might have something in prod. It might be burning your buildings up, everything up. You can't just be like, no, I froze my requirement, I cannot change it, right? You have to. So that kind of places, Kanban gives us more flexibility to adopt and change, right? So that kind of places where I would recommend, or I would not, I'm not saying recommend, I would personally use that kind of thing, because I know it's very easy for me to change things and then adapt accordingly and then do it, right? Changing priorities regularly, work need to be handled based on cost of delay, obviously, right? We've been talking the same thing. Change in the organization is painful. Again, I'll talk about this a little. You believe you can limit WIP, right? Handling the WIPs is easy, and then you will be bound to it, and then you can handle that WIPs. So let me get back to the third point of change in organization is painful. I don't want to tell companies or teams that, hey, if discipline and doing it right in a Scrum framework is difficult, why don't you go rogue and start using Kanban? Right? Don't take it as an advantage. Right? Don't take it as an advantage. Kanban does not change a lot of things. It comes with what you have and then add some best practices into it, where you can see that problems and solve those problems. It's not going to do drastic changes for what you're doing as an organization. If you're doing waterfall or whatever you're doing, it's not going to do a lot of changes. It comes and then it embraces the framework or the methodology that you're doing, and it does show us some problems or mechanisms that we're doing might wrong or correct, and then we can adapt according to it. Don't think it as like, okay, since Scrum is a little tough, let's use Kanban. It makes us lives easy, and we can keep doing with what we are doing, and we can still call ourselves agile, and we are doing. Don't use it for that reason. But yeah, I think it's implementing of Kanban is a little easy compared to Scrum, because you have to do a lot of changes here: planning, refinement, review, retros, and the mindset and all of those things, right? So again, this is from experience, and I would always recommend that if you are a manager, don't take a decision by yourself, saying that, hey, I want to do a Scrum, so my team does Scrum. I want to do Kanban, so my team does Kanban. Talk to your team members, explain them what this is, and then let them figure it out, right? At the end, make sure that you're delivering what your customer needs, obviously, as the faster and most effective way. But whenever you implement this, for it to become easy and for the team to embrace it, make the team part of it, make them choose it for themselves, rather than you pushing it to themselves and then trying to motivate them to use this or adapt to this, right? Because what do you think?
Yeah, I think you rightly said all of it basically, and I also share the same experience that you share. Like I'll also say that don't think from the organization's point of view, from the leadership adaptability point of view. Like, do they want to adapt to Scrum or do they want to adapt to Kanban, or do they want to follow a separate practice altogether? Right? Yeah. Having said that, we are only 8 minutes left, so maybe
Fantastic.
good
Let's.
to,
I
yeah.
think. Yeah, we are on time. Focus on agility, guys. Framework is not the thing, right? Focus on agility. Focus on your customer. Is your customer happy? How soon are we delivering the product? Is he getting what he is needing for the money he is spending? How effectively? How soon? With what cost? Scrum, Kanban, for anything is fine, right? Because do you want to add anything here? This is your slide, I know.
Yeah. So there have been various case studies around here. For example, recently I heard a case study from Lego. So the agile coach at Lego was being interviewed by Barry over him from Scrum.org. He simply said that he simply asked a very simple question. Barry, tell me where the Scrum is followed to the core. So he only focused upon the organizational agility, right? So as an agile coach, what he looks for is that how fast you're delivering your product to the customer and how satisfied your customer is, and how you are beating the competition in the market, how you are surviving is the thing in the business.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us, because given said that, thank you guys. We are open for questions. Any questions are welcome now. You could either type it on the chat or you could.
Sharad, this is Srinivas here.
Yep, Srinivas, hi.
Yeah, hi. It's not the question, or I do not know what you call it, interaction or shareability or whatever it is. The course is excellent, awesomely presented. Thank you so much for the information flow. And in Scrum, we have MVP, minimum value production addition, something like that. We have a target.
Okay.
Likewise, do we have something with Kanban? Because Kanban, in my opinion, I would feel that Kanban is something like a re-engineering structure. We do not have any enabling sort of a thing, enablers or something like that. It's a re-engineering, we try to get something, we try to tune it, and we try to address the deliverables. So in your experience, do you see something similar to MVP for Kanban?
I can take this question because do you want to take a hit on it?
Yeah. So whether it is an MVP or whether it is not MVP, again, is the question of business agility, right? So whether you follow Scrum or Kanban, certainly the very first instinct is that to release a POC or what we used to call as a POC earlier. Now we call it as a minimum viable product to the market and get the feedback from the customer. So you also create a roadmap in Kanban, like you create a roadmap in Scrum, saying that, okay, this is the two functionalities that I'm going to release to the market, which will be called as an MVP. Similarly, you define a product backlog item or in Kanban also. So what I feel is that whether it is an MVP or a complete product, basically it is how you plan to deliver either in Scrum or Kanban.
Yep.
So Scrum doesn't say that there has to be MVP in every increment. Scrum says that increments should be additive and usable, basically. So
Right.
the first minimal is that minimal viable product, and then you keep on adding it. And similarly, the same way you do in Kanban.
Yeah. I mean, Srinivas, I think for me, if you ask me, MVP is not a Scrum thing. It's the way fast. It's the way to get to the customers faster. Be it in Scrum, be it in Safe, be it in Less, be it in Kanban, anywhere. How you get to the customer sooner, right? Let's just assume that you're doing a software development project using Kanban. Would we not think about an MVP there then? We have to, right? I think the reason that you are saying this is because in our minds, we have a notion that said Kanban I do not, I think you put some words and sentences about re-engineering. I don't want to go into that. But I think we have a notion that Kanban is only used in operations, in infrastructure, or in that kind of areas. No, we do software development also with using Kanban framework. Like I said, Kanban is used in all the places. So if you are delivering, or if your team is working on using Kanban method to deliver a software product to a customer, would we not think about MVP in Kanban? We would, right? So MVP is not fixed to Scrum. Depending upon what we are doing, obviously, if you're doing, again, saying the same software development, I would think about MVP in Kanban also. It's not fixed to Scrum. Did I answer the whole question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Fantastic, great.
Makes sense.
Can we use same WIP for all the columns in the Kanban board? Can you organize a session to cover less framework? Yes, we will talk about less later. But can we use that same WIP for all the columns in a Kanban board? No. Yes. I don't know. Right? Yeah, because it totally depends on the capacity of your developers and the other people that are helping you to do the work, right? So it's a workflow. When you have a Kanban board, it's dev, test, UAT, blah, 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 or whatever you want to call it, right? And then if you have enough members of enough capacity to do the same, if you have same capacity to do the same things, why not? And if you only have one tester and you have 5 developers, and that's not going to work out, obviously, but the one tester cannot do the whole work, test the whole thing about what the developers have done. Again, the concept of developer testers, we don't want to get into that, but just an example. You can, you cannot. Who decides the WIP limits? The team decides the WIP limits, right? Depending upon the capacity. Okay, so I hope that we don't have a fixed time for deliverables in Kanban. Will this affect overall delivery? Because you want to take that?
Yeah, so we discussed about the SLE, right? So we have a fixed time. So we set up some kind of expectations, which are called as service level expectations in Kanban, right? And we give it a probability. Like 90% of the time, I'll complete this development work in 21 days, right? Like that. So it does have a fixed time, yeah. So which we call as a SLE. If you don't define SLE in Kanban, so as I said, like many organizations just start putting up everything on the board and just start moving the items. So that is not Kanban, right? Unless you define the service level expectations, try to optimize the flow, then only you have actually implemented Kanban.
Yep. Any more questions, guys? I think I opened up a poll. If you guys see, please do answer the poll. And then also, if you have any more questions, please. Okay, I see some message here. Will you? Yeah, we will send the recording over the email. Please do vote there so we know things. Okay. What more questions, guys? We can happily spare 10 more minutes if you have questions, and if you do not, then it was a fantastic time with you guys.
What kind of frequency? Okay, go ahead.
Yep, we'll be there here to answer your questions. Go ahead. Yeah.
One question about the swim lane. So normally in the Kanban board in the organization, the team I manage, I usually have depending upon the status, like open, in development, in testing, or what, I mean, depending upon the project, right? You mentioned something called expediter. So you have that column just as a temporary thing, I mean, or a what you say, that a backup when there is a high priority defect or something comes up and the business wants to fix it immediately. Because I don't have a column in our organization. We don't have a separate column like expedite.
It's a row. It's a row.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Kanban, I am familiar with the columns, like different columns, open, to do, in progress, completed, something like that. I'm not sure about the row thing.
Yeah. So to answer this question, so you can define expedite in any way. So let's say you have all these columns, in progress, in development, etc. But you think that there is a high priority ticket that has come in. Let's say a blocker defect which needs to be solved today, right? So you just create that ticket on your board and just mark it with a sticky that it is a high priority ticket or expedite ticket, so that everyone else is able to visualize it, right? So that people can stop working on what they're working right now and spend all their energies to basically resolve that block of design. So that is the idea of an expedite. How you do it is simply your,
the implementation part I was talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, implementation, if you're using Jira or something, I mean, if you go to the configure, you will see swim lanes, and then you can configure those swim lanes, just to add on to what I said earlier. Sumit.
Yeah, we use Jira, so that's
Yeah.
why I say columns.
No, there is columns, there is rows. I can, probably I can show you offline if you want. That's not a big deal. But there are columns, there are swim lanes. You can see that.
Yeah.
Or you could see how.
And also you mentioned Kanban can also be used for a software development project. But I mean, most probably wherever I have worked and I have come across, for production support and break fixes, they have been using Kanban because they are not time bound. But when you have a software development and when you are promising something at the end of each sprint, like during the course of some period of time, you cannot take an enormous amount of time, right? How would you fit in that kind of product in a Kanban method?
Right. So do you again, there are different ways of working in each framework, right, Sumati? So in sprints, you're saying you have your 2-week timelines and all. Here, you have your lead time and your cycle time. For everything that you're working on, you also see when are you starting it, when are you completing it. It doesn't mean that Kanban is open, so you can work for 1 year on a ticket and then keep working on it forever, right? And also we try to understand, depending upon, there's a discussion that you can get into estimations again there. Kanban in some areas has expectations, some does not have estimations. Some talk about small, medium, large, and all. You do estimations, you do not do estimations. That's a whole different thing. But you can also do that. In Kanban, since it's open, it doesn't mean that you will have the ticket open forever. You will try to follow see, it's the same people working on it. You will try to get the work done in a different way. Here, you don't have sprints, but you have your daily meetings. You work with them to understand what's going on. You support them to complete the work. It's the same way, a different framework. Here, you have in Scrum, you have a retro or review at the end. If you don't have it here, you have your operations review or other review meeting that you can schedule here to see what has been completed and what not has been completed. So I don't think it would stop us from using Kanban to deliver deliver using Kanban, right? I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah. Any item cannot be on the board forever.
So
like,
does it answer, Sumati, or?
No, I don't mean to say that any item on the board can be there for an indefinite period of time. I didn't mean to say that, but there is no pressure or there is no, it is not time bound. That's what I meant to say. I didn't say that it can take its own sweet time or anything, but it is not like a constraint. Oh, I have to finish it. I have to deliver something at the end of this two-week sprint or a 1 month sprint or whatever. That's all I tried to say.
Well, that's the reason it's a little flexible. Okay, Vikas, sorry.
Yeah. So, using the words like pressure and constraint is something that is something Kanban helps you avoid, basically. So you do not say that. So when you implement Kanban, you will not say, okay, these 5 items have to deliver in within a 2-week sprint. Right? It is basically looking at what your team is capable of, and based on that you define your service level expectations, which is similar to your timelines. So you will say that okay, the change request of large size does not take 2 weeks; it takes 3 weeks to deliver for us. Right? So let us put a SLA of 3 weeks here. But change request of or a development item of a smaller size will take only 5 days for us. You will say okay, the SLA for smaller size item is 5 days, and this is how you are defining the time. How it is different from Scrum is that in Scrum you would like to divide the item which is for 21 days into the capacity of the sprint. You will try to divide it into 2 parts.
Correct.
Whereas Kanban says that there is no point in dividing it, right? If you know that this particular item is as a whole is going to achieve the complete survivability of this particular item, then make it 21 days, but set the expectations accordingly. This is how it works basically.
I think that makes more sense.
I have one more question, and I hope if it is not too much, I can ask. Otherwise, I will respect the time limit.
Yeah, we will take the question. At the same time, I know someone was also asking a question. We'll give them a chance. And we'll take this question too. No worries. Someone else also was asking a question.
I raised the hand. This is Nasmin.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to support what sorry, I forgot the name of the woman, the lady who was talking.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we should understand that both Kanban and Scrum are agile methodologies. They fall under it, which is not waterfall. There is no. I don't agree with the time-bound restrictions, because under both the methodologies or framework or whatever we are using, I feel it's one is iterative and one is other is used to estimate the time. Under both the cases, we are actually trying to find out the time which we spend on the project at the end of the day for the money. At the end of the day, it's money which is in the project, right? So we're still, everything what we're talking, Scrum versus Kanban, we're still talking about Agile, So that's what I wanted to just add.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Nasmin.
Yeah, just one correction here. So Scrum is not iterative. So if you are calling Scrum iterative, that means that it can still be a waterfall. Like Scrum is itself a kind of independent sprints which are actually delivering value to the customer. Right? We may not call it iterative.
Incrementally.
Yeah.
Incrementally iterative. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So
that's where the MVP.
Yeah.
Anyone else had any questions? We will
also just to simulate the high-end difference between Scrum and Kanban. Like just imagine you're traveling from Dallas to Houston in a car. It takes about 4 hours. So that is the destination time. Whereas in Kanban, maybe it takes 6 hours if you go by train. So, however, we are trying to reach the destination in some time limit. So the flexibility here, if you call, you can go by train without any hassles. That's a Kanban. And whereas if you go by your own car, you will reach there in 4 hours. So, I mean, just like this thing, because someone was pointing out that, like Kanban has no restrictions. It has a restriction. Like I just want to exchange my views here.
Very well said. Very well said. So the resistance over here could be that I cannot go by car because I do not know how to drive a car. So suddenly you don't have to go by the car. You can take a train, right? So Kanban will help you to identify those resistances to change, and help you achieve your end. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Srinivas, for contributing. Thank you. Sumati, we'll take one last question from you and then we will wrap up today.
Yeah, at the beginning, it was mentioned that Scrum is a framework, whereas Kanban is a method. So is it a complementary term that is interchangeable, framework and method? Because everywhere, in the job posting or somewhere, they say different agile frameworks, and within parentheses, they would say less Kanban, Scrum, Lean, everything. So when at the beginning in the slide, it was mentioned like the left column, it says Scrum is a framework and Kanban is a method. So that's kind of, if you could throw some detail on that, that would be really helpful.
Because I'll let you take a stab on it.
Yeah. So it is, so have you heard, so it is like, generalization of a brand. So since Scrum has been quite popular, from the very beginning, so they have generalized the brand as Agile framework, less framework, right? Anything in Agile is a framework right now, right? It doesn't matter. Basically, the job posting, Kanban will, many people call Kanban also as a framework. So I'll give you an example. For example, so when a brand becomes general, you start calling anything by that particular brand name. For example, if you know example of distillery, so mineral water. So it is a very famous brand in India. So any mineral water right now is called a Bisleri. Why? Because I mean, even if it is from Finlay, it is from any other brand, they still call it Bisleri, right?
Yeah.
So that is a common, general perceptions that has been caused that everything in Agile is a framework. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That is the only way.
Yeah, Kanban is not a framework; it's a method or it's a set of practices. So let me add more to what Vikas said in a different angle, right? So a methodology is complete. It has a set of rules, regulations, something that you cannot change. You have to go by book, do it accordingly, like that only. It's methodology. It's fixed. Framework is incomplete for a reason. So they have a framework, but it's not complete. If you're doing Scrum right now, there are user stories, there is test-driven development, there is all of different practices that you are using to complement onto the framework that you are doing here. Framework has some things in it, they want you guys to do it, and then add more things that can help your team to do better, and then use this. Framework is for a reason incomplete, whereas methodology is a total complete set thing that you get it. So that's the difference between a framework and a methodology. So yeah, and Kanban, the reason it's not called a framework, it's not complete. It's a group of practices that we have brought together, and then we're using it, right? Kanban by itself, it's called, what's a Kanban is a Japanese term which says a visual board, right? It's a board, so that's it. It's not a framework by itself, right? So that's the reason you might see a lot of things, but Agile is a methodology. Frameworks you have in that, Scrum, less, whatever frameworks that you're talking about. Kanban is also called a methodology or frameworks they call it, but it's a method and set of practices. And everyone, not everyone might agree with this. There's so many.
Yeah. So many job postings also put agile practices, right? They don't put an agile framework. So it depends upon who is writing the job posting. So don't go by that basically. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. I would request you to go ahead and fill the form there, the poll that we have. If you guys are interested, we want to understand how good we have done to make any changes moving forward. But it was a great session and great questions. We will meet again in next 2 or 3 weeks with a different topic about the Kanban. I hope you guys liked it. We would like to see your inputs through the poll that we have in there. Thank you so much, guys. You have a good one. Thank you, Vikas.
All right. Thank you, Sharad.